You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to give you the inspiration you need to get started in the outdoors or keep moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hi friends, today is Tuesday, May 18th, 2026. So exciting. Hey, the Growler is about to happen in Gunnison, Colorado, and if you don't know what that is, it's an amazing bike race. They actually have multiple races for different ages and lengths, and anyway, look up the Growler. It's super, super cool, but that's what May means. Something else that May means to me is I celebrate my own personal holiday. May 15th is the Gunnison Sage Grouse Liberation Day, or maybe better said, my Liberation Day, because the gates open up, the sage grouse are no longer lekking, which means that the trails are open, the woods are open for all the kind of exploration that we want to do, and that's really super exciting. I hope exciting things are happening where you are. Now, a couple episodes ago, I announced that I got new stickers, and that anybody who wants to have an Adventure Sports Podcast sticker, all you have to do is email me at info@adventuresportspodcast.com and give me a mailing address. I'm going to send you stickers. And if you want a bunch of stickers, maybe you're having an event or something, just let me know how many you need. Otherwise, I'll give you a handful and have fun with them. Pass them out, put them on your water bottles, whatever you like to do with your stickers. And thank you also to everyone who already sent in requests for stickers. They're on the way. They'll be there soon. And actually, they're popular. A lot of people are asking for stickers, so that's fantastic. And I have another announcement. It turns out that when I went from 3 episodes a week to 2 episodes a week, the distance between interviews and publication date for each episode started getting too long. And I don't like that. I don't think it's nice to the guests for them to have to wait for months to hear their episode. And sometimes there's seasonal conflict. Maybe it's spring and people are talking about what they're going to do that summer, and then you hear the episode in the fall when winter's coming on. It just doesn't make any sense. So the announcement is this. For a while, I don't know how long, probably 2 months, we're not going to play flashbacks on Friday. Instead of flashbacks, we're going to play new episodes on Friday. That'll get the interviews out to you faster, better for the guests, better for the seasonality, the whole 9 yards. So Fridays are no longer reruns, and actually the reruns do great. I think that we dig deeply enough into the past that either people haven't heard the episode, or when it comes up, they're like, oh, I love that one. I want to hear that one again. So the reruns actually do really, really well. But for a little while, we're going to do brand new episodes on Fridays, brand new episodes on Tuesdays. And as always, the number one thing that you can do to help support the Adventure Sports Podcast is to share it with a friend. Thanks in advance. Now on with today's episode. Hey friends, we have Tami Asars with us today, and we were just chatting before we hit record here and having too much fun, and we realized we're going to talk all day if we don't hit record. So we finally hit record, but here's the fun part. Tami was on the Adventure Sports Podcast on episode 384. So we're almost 4 times that many episodes now. Not quite, but I mean, we have a lot of episodes since then. So she was on back in the early days talking about the Pacific Northwest backpacking, especially around Mount Rainier. And that was super cool. But since then, she has done so much more hiking. And she is now a Triple Crown holder, which means she's done the Pacific Crest Trail, she has done the Continental Divide Trail, and she's done the Appalachian Trail. And those are the long trails, but she's done many of other long trails, like the Colorado Trail and the Arizona Trail. And so anyway, she is a thru hiker and a half, but more than that, she's an author. She just last month, I believe, released her latest book, which is called Long Lost, and I can already tell I want to read it. It's about her journey hiking these trails, and she also has written more than 5 guidebooks for trails. She is a field data researcher for Green Trails Maps, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Tami, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Kurt. Happy to be back.
Well, we've had so much fun just chatting about this, and The Adventure Sports Podcast is not just a backpacking podcast, but it's one of my favorite subjects just because I enjoy it so much. And
Yeah.
so every time I get to talk to somebody who loves backpacking, I get a little excited. And I hope our listeners will too, because this is super cool. But why do you love backpacking? You've done so much of it. Why do you love it?
It's just pure soul food. I mean, I think, when in the Pacific Northwest, there's so many people that backpack, and I think we all are connected for many of the same reasons. We get out there and we can unplug and detach, and there's far less screens. There's far less mind noise that happens in the front country. It's just a beautiful place for the soul to rest, and there's a peacefulness. My cheesy cliche is like you can almost feel that peacefulness through your pores, like through your skin. And when you come back, you're just this quieter, more relaxed version of yourself than you were when you set foot, into your work, job, office craziness that happens every day. And it's just nice to be out there and that scenery. I mean, you get one lap on this. My thing is always like, you get one lap on this crazy planet that we have, and why not just see what's behind the veil of a car where you can travel? Let's go out on foot and just get back in there and kind of take a primeval route and see where we end up. Those kinds of things make it just awesome for me. And for everybody else, I think.
Yeah.
People love it. It's just so pure.
Well, Tami, I'll confess to you, I've never hiked a long trail. And that sounds crazy because I've done so much backpacking. But I became a destination backpacker.
Okay,
So
that's fine too, though.
I would pick an obscure mountain lake where I thought no one's going to be there. Maybe no one's been there in a year or two, and then we would backpack into that, stay for a couple, 3 days, backpack back out. And so I've never done a long trail. My family and my sons and I did a through hike through Holy Cross Wilderness, mostly off trail because there were no trails where we wanted to go.
Love that. Love
And
that.
it was an amazing, amazing through hike. And when I talked to a ranger about the best route, the ranger said, well, no one does that.
I love it. See, these are the best kinds of adventures. I love that kind of thing. Just go. See what's out there. You have to know how to navigate, though. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was a little nervous about it. I don't know how long I spent on Google Earth staring at it and memorizing it. And
Love that.
in the end, we never pulled out a map.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of high country up there. You can kind of sight navigate through there, which is nice, right? Yeah.
It's not like you're in the jungle.
Yeah, right.
So you're right. That's what we did. But this is not about me doing that through hike. I'm just saying you're the through hiker. So
I don't know. That's pretty cool. We could talk about that hike, too. That sounds amazing.
Why do you through hike instead of destination hike or section hike? I guess you've done section hiking, too.
I've done it all. I've done it all. I've done all kinds.
Describe how they're different so people will know.
Sure. I think I love them all. For me, there are people that are like, no, I have to through hike. This being out there for months on end really does something to my soul. I don't know that that's me. I love the section hiking aspect where you're going out. And I talk a little bit about that at the end of Long Lost too, just in the epilogue. Like, what is it about this through hike that provides this like crazy soul fulfilling adventure? And when you're out there, one of my kind of quotes is like, it's like living life, a full life in a short time frame. You have 4 to 5 months to experience everything. You get the highs, you get the lows, you get the joys, you get the amazing views and this craziness that happens, but you also get these deep depressions and you get this sadness and you get these moments where you're not sure you're going to continue and you have all this stuff hitting you in this short period of time. And I think that's why that through hike resonates with people. And then there's also this tremendous thing that happens with your body. I mean, you're getting all these endorphins and your body is changing. You finish and you're like a whole different mental and physical version of yourself. And you walk off those trails strong and mentally changed. They say that it takes 3 months to change a behavior when you do it every single day. So your mind rewires while you're out there on a long through hike. And then you get done and you're just this you almost don't even know what to do with this energy at the end of these things, and so you have to train your mind. A lot of people don't realize that at the end of a through hike you have to be prepared for the wave of strangeness that hits you when you re-enter your normal world, and you think, oh, I'm just going back home, but it's not that. It's so complicated because of what has happened to you while you're out there. And people might say, oh, it's only 4 to 5 months of your life. Like, how much could happen? But when you're out there doing that same marathon day after day after day after day, and you're fighting with your mental internal dialogue, and you're struggling with the physical aspect of your knee hurting or your ankle, whatever, it's a new ailment every day, it seems like. But that's the through hike aspect. And then you have the section hiking aspect. You have all that. It's in a miniature form. And sometimes I think section hiking is almost harder because you're working and you're busy, and then you're off the couch and you have a week to go out and do this tremendously hard thing, and you're out there doing all this stuff day after day, and then your body is like, wait, we didn't agree to wearing 30 pounds all of a sudden. We didn't train for this or whatever. And some people do train for them, but it still works. And then it's just a shorter version, and you get to come back to creature comforts. And it might be a little less with the mental aspect of rewiring, but it has the same refreshment that you feel on a long hike. Big fan of section hikes, though. You can get back to your deliciousness at the end of it. Fresh produce and stuff. The food aspect,
food.
Yeah, fruit.
Trail food is
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, dairy, bread, all the good things that are fresh that we take for granted out there on the trail. That, and then people doing shorter versions of through hikes, like the Wonderland Trail, which is 93 miles, where you're out there from 8 to 10 days, and or whatever, however long, and then you get back from that, and you have a similar feeling. Yeah, it's all in the big clump under the title of backpacking. There's just a little bit different. There's a difference when you're out there longer. And when I first started doing this, so I did I have a book called Hike the Pacific Crest Trail, Washington, which is all of Washington State. And at the time, you could go all the way through to Canada and Manning Park, and that whole stretch was 588 miles, give or take. And so I had done that, several times, where I'd been out for a month or more. And so when I first did the PCT, I was like, what's another 3 months? I've done it for a month. It can't be that different. But boy, was I wrong. It sure is different when you're out there longer. You miss home, you miss a lot of things, but there's also a lot of joy to be found. It's funny how it's just a whole yin and yang push and pull all the time.
And it rewires your brain. Here's a question I love to ask. One of my favorite questions. People that go into nature and spend time there, they find a new rhythm. I call it the rhythm of nature or whatever, but it changes the way you feel. Your whole routine is different, but to be in sync with that takes some time because we're leaving the hustle and bustle of modern life. And I always ask, how many days does it take to sync up? And you've been out there so many times, maybe you sync up faster. But that's my question for you. How long does it take for you to find that rhythm?
That's a great question. Let me ask you to clarify a little bit. Are you talking about when your soul sort of starts resting, when you sort of feel that pattern?
You're on nature time instead of artificial time,
Yeah.
the way I think of it.
Yeah. That's a tricky one to answer. I mean, I've had section hikes where after a couple days, you're kind of like, yep, I'm grooving. I'm in the groove now. And then I've had through hikes where after a week, you're still like, you kind of you're still not quite sure whether you want to continue. I mean, it's honestly, the beginning of any through hike is probably the hardest because you know how much further you have to go. And oh gosh, this is 3,000 miles, 3,150 or whatever with the CDT, and you're a week in and you're like, this desert's hot. I'm already chafed out. I'm, struggling already mentally. How is this going to go for the next 5 months? So it's harder to get into that groove. It's harder for your mind to go, yeah, this is great. I mean, maybe the first couple days you're like, yeah, here's my, I'm so glad I'm out here. And then after things start to settle in a bit, it almost is harder because you know that you have much longer to go. Whereas like with the section hike where you're out, we'll just give it a week as an example. You're out 2 days and you're like, I have 5 more days of this glory and get to see all this stuff. And your mind starts to rest because you can see the finish line a little faster. So I guess it depends on the hike, and it depends on what you're doing and also how you're responding to it. Like if it's really hard for you and you're not sleeping well and you're whatever, it makes that end goal a lot harder. No matter whether it's a week or longer. And then I think it's harder to get into that groove. And there's also this funny thing that is like the honeymoon period of any hike. And the honeymoon period, I call it, is kind of like the planning. It's the excitement. It's like, I'm going to go buy new gear. I've got this, these poles didn't work well last time, so I'm going to go find new poles. And you get online, and if you're anything like me, you're obsessive about looking at what's the lightest and what's the best and what are people saying about this. And you're reading all the reviews just to buy like $100 pair of poles. But it's like that fun excitement of like, I'm going to get to use these. And like in your example, like in the Holy Cross Wilderness, I'm going to go out and use these. And it's like this fun excitement of like, if you can compare it to a wedding, it's like, I'm going to go, the wedding is the start date of the trail. And then you have that and you're on the trail for a couple days and you've got this honeymoon period going on. And then all of a sudden the honeymoon period ends and, the poo hits the fan, so to speak, and things get real. And things are hurting and you're not sleeping well and you're kind of moody and the sky opens up a tantrum and you're like, gosh, this sounded fun when I was sitting at my desk drinking my coffee, surfing for those poles. But now, So, I think that was a really long way to answer your question. I'm sorry I went down a rabbit hole.
No, I appreciate it. It's very good insight. I think one other difference is if you're through hiking, you have to cover a certain distance in a certain period of time. And that's in my mind, that would be a driver. It would change the whole experience knowing I have to get in my miles or else I'm not going to complete this thing.
Absolutely. That is a huge part of it. And you wake up in the morning and there's days where you are not feeling good. And that alarm goes, I set my alarm so that, getting up early. And, I got to knock out 27 miles today. And you're done with mile 1 going, 26 more of those, and it might have been that you started with a giant climb or whatever, and you're just wiped out because you're not sleeping well and mental fractures and all that stuff. And you're on that going, okay, I've got another 4 months of this, another 3 months of this. And it really, really is tough to motivate yourself every day to do those miles. But one thing that I think people that don't through hike or haven't done a big trail don't understand is you can't put your mind saying, I've got 3,000 miles to complete. You have to go, it's only 75 miles until the next town. So if I do 25 today and I do 25 tomorrow, then I'll be there on Thursday, And it's funny, you just kind of do math through the entire trail. Your brain every day is like, okay, so I've done 3. So if I do another 25, then that puts me, I can maybe get into that town on Wednesday if I do 28 today. And then so you start spinning in this cycle of like, it's really getting from town to town or getting from resupply to resupply that you look at as opposed like to the whole thing. If you look at the whole thing every day, you'll just quit. You just won't want to do it. It's too big. Your mind can't comprehend it. It's too much to say I'm going to be out here for 4 months. But if you break it into small chunks, then it makes it a lot more manageable.
There's another aspect of this that I find very curious when I talk to people who like to be in nature and do big things. And I'm going to use 14ers as an example. You get to the summit of a 14er, and there's usually a small group of people up there who arrived around the same time you did. And some of them are excited to come up to you and say, I'm on number 37. How many have you done? And then there's some of them that are sitting on a rock by themselves, looking at the view, right? And then you find out that there's a whole bunch of people that don't even climb 14ers anymore because they just love to climb. They don't care about the numbers. And they're on the 13ers because it's quiet. And I celebrate all of these perspectives.
Yes.
There's no criticism. You do it for what you love, right?
Amen. Yes, absolutely.
But I think through hiking turns into the numbers game, like you just described. To some degree, it has to. But I could imagine there are people out there who are thinking, I don't care how long this takes, and if I get weathered out in the fall, I'll come back in the spring. And I imagine there are people out there that are just kind of sauntering along the trail. I don't know. Do you meet people like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not for everybody. It's hard, and it's not always fun. I mean, people are like, wow, I'd love to do that. It's not always the picnic that a lot of people make it out to be. And I think that's important to know, too. Just like anything, when you're finished, you're like, that was great. But then you look back and you dissect it a little bit, and you have days where you're just like, why the heck am I out here spending my life this way? Because the views are great, but you've seen very similar, especially like when I did the Appalachian Trail, it's like there's a lot of green tunnel that's known for that, and so the days kind of blend into one another. There's a lot of beauty to be found and something beautiful in every day for sure. But you get into some of those states and it's like, okay, here we go, walking through deciduous mixed conifers again. Yay.
Yes.
And then, and you love it because you're out there and you're breathing fresh air and you're getting those endorphins and doing all that. But one day blends into the other and your mind starts wandering about all the things you could be doing or the things that are happening at home or how you're missing out on the annual family barbecue or whatever it is. And it becomes kind of hard, to stick with it. Yeah. I mean, there are people that do all kinds of things. Section hiking is great for that reason. I have a friend who was inspired to start doing the Pacific Crest Trail in really large chunks. He started out doing slow, and then it was so fun. I watched him transform from being like, he really just did small overnight hikes, backpacking trips, to doing these big, then he did a week long, and he was like, yeah, and then he did like a month long, and pretty soon I'm like, you are a thru hiker. You're speaking the language. You're doing all the things. Like you know the people, you get the culture, you're there. And it's been just so fun watching him transform. But recently when we were chatting, he was like, I don't think I want to do these huge, long things. I think being out there like a month at most works well for me. So you kind of start to understand what that is for you. That is the balance. Because being out there for 4 to 5 months is a big chunk of your summer. It's a big chunk of your life. And so there's people doing all kinds of stuff. The like week-long hike for a lot of people is a massive, massive achievement. I mean, that's huge for some people. And even beginners that go out for one night and get that experience, to them, that's a bucket list. And that's cool too. There's just people doing all kinds of stuff. And some people hike for, like you said, for the reason of being, having solitude. And you're not going to find that on these big, busy trails. There's a lot of people on them. And you might find them in some areas, but for the most part, it's pretty social, aside from the CDT. The CDT isn't quite as crowded, but, so there's many reasons for doing it. I love to celebrate people that are doing these shorter trips or doing a through for their first time or doing even a first time overnighter. It makes my heart happy when I hear these stories and people are celebrating the beginnings because, you become OCD with it and then you turn into me. Don't do that. I'm just kidding.
There's something that I've talked about a couple of times on the podcast over the years that I call the quarter-mile camp. And the reason is because it's so rewarding, especially with young children. And the whole idea is that you drive out on a forest road, you park your car, and you go a quarter mile perpendicular to the road. You will have that wilderness to yourself for weeks if you want it, because no one's there, because everyone's on the trails.
Right.
But the point is, the commitment was not the distance. You still have to carry your loads. You're going to learn how to put things in a pack and manage weight a little bit and learn how to cook in the woods. And you're still only a quarter mile from the car.
Yeah.
So, if things get really bad, you have an easy escape. And I mention that to people because it's a beautiful way to get started.
Yeah.
You know? It's just go put on a pack. Don't worry about the distance. Just go get into nature. Find a spot. And live large there for a while. And little kids just love it. They're not going to want to do a thru hike.
No. Yeah.
But they just love the idea. They're out with mom and dad or mom or dad or however it works. They're out there just experiencing nature, which children love to do. Anyway, enough of that. It's a great way to start. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is a
great way
great
to
way to
start.
start. Yeah, manageable chunks for whatever skill you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other thing you mentioned was culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't realize that through hiking is a culture until they try it. It's a subset. It's not just, okay, there are a whole bunch of people on a trail. No, there's something that develops there.
Yeah.
Can you describe that to us?
Yeah, trail culture is it's like being dropped into a foreign country and not knowing the language, not fully understanding what happens. It's really a fun little learning curve for new beginners who haven't done it, because the way I describe it is like, okay, we'll take the Pacific Crest Trail where there's quite a few people. It's like you're all on a racetrack and the towns are the pit stops. So like you're on the racetrack and you're like passing somebody and then you don't see them again, and then you get to a town and you're doing your pit stop and all of a sudden they show up and you're like, hey, I saw you at such and such. And then pretty soon you're getting to know them better, and then you get back out on the racetrack and you're doing and using racetrack not because it's competitive or anything, but just because it's a loop and it seems easy to compare. But it's fun because you get to learn that. There's a language that goes along with it. Like people will just drop, yeah, I took a 0 yesterday. And if you don't know what that is, people are like, you took a what? You did a what?
This is not constipation we're talking about.
Right. A 0 what? Yeah. But no, a 0 miles, 0 mile day, and then, or they'll say Nero, which is like an almost a 0. It's nearly a 0. So it's a Nero, so there's a little language that goes along with it. And there's this pattern, and there's this, people get each other a little bit better when you're all out there suffering. It's trauma bonding at its purest form. I mean, everybody is suffering from something, whether it's mental anxiety or their ankle hurts. Somebody has something going on every time you meet somebody, whether they're sitting on a rock crying or they're limping along or they're just got a big smile on their face, trying to hide what's going on behind the scenes. There's something going on behind the scenes with every single person you meet. And it's so fun to not only share in the challenges of it, but also to share in the victory. Like, why did you decide to do this? Where are you from? And then there's another thing which is super fun with through hiking, and I encourage people that section hike or even just day hike to do this too, which is trail names. So trail names are the identity that happens to you when you're out there, and you either are named from a fellow hiker, which is usually what it is. You can name yourself. There are no official rules, but if you do name yourself, stay away from the really like cool names. Like, you don't want to give yourself like the name like Wonder Woman or Ninja or something like that, because that's a I mean, you do want something that's pleasant, but maybe not so like hard to live up to if you have to pop off trail or whatever. But it's fun because you all have an identity that is not your identity at home. So you're not known like as the fireman or the police chief, or I mean, those could be trail names, but for the most part, it's not like the podcast host. You become like, I don't know, cowboy, or you become something you did. And I'll just give you a couple fun examples of trail names. Like, so I hiked with my youngest trail brother, and the word tramily is used a lot too. That's trail family. The trail, by the nature of your pace and your start date and all that, usually assigns you people. That's the cosmic way of bringing people together, and you have no control over who it assigns you. And that becomes fun to watch too, because sometimes it assigns you people that aren't necessarily the people you would pick, and you either embrace them and learn to just go with their quirks and flow with it, or you like have to speed up your pace a little bit to try to make that work. But the tramily I was assigned, I had just super fun trail brothers, and my younger trail brother, he got the trail name Wrong Tent because because in 2016 he set up his tent at Warner Springs. There was like this big, they don't do this anymore, but they had this big community meadow, and everybody stopped at Warner Springs Community Center. They offered a meal and they had a hiker box, and you got a resupply there. So Warner Springs was like this place to stop and camp. So we all set up our tents. So it was a sea of tents, and it was a lot lot of tents, and that many of them had like the same Dyneema tent from the same company. And so he got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and he was half asleep. And when he came back, he was lost, and he was like trying not to wake people up, wading through a sea of tents. So he found a tent that he thought was his, and he unzipped it, and he was like half asleep going, and he looked inside, and there was someone sleeping in his tent, and his brain went, why is someone in my tent? So he starts yelling at this guy, why are you in my tent? And the guy's like, this is my tent. And he's like, no. And then he's looking around, and he sees that there's like a quilt that's not his, and all the gear in there is not familiar. And he was like, oh, whoops, sorry. And he zips it back up, and he's like walking around till he finds his tent. So in the morning, it was super fun. We were getting ready to go, and I have an older trail brother and a younger trail brother that I was hiking with. And we were all standing under the shelter because it was raining, and the younger one unloads this tale, right? He's like, oh man, you guys, I'm so embarrassed. And my older trail brother's like, that was me. You tried to climb into my tent. You're lucky I didn't punch you. So he ended up with the trail name Wrong Tent. So it's usually like a trait, something that happens like that, or a trait you exhibit. And that's super fun too. So it's like we're all just one big dysfunctional workplace out there trying to hold it together. And we all have these fun names, and and so everybody calls each other by your trail name. You really don't know the identity necessarily unless you bond really tightly with the person you're hiking with.
That's fun. I have a nephew named Sam, and we went on a few backpacking trips together. And he's the kind of kid that would never tie his shoelaces. His shoes were always just flopping everywhere. I don't know how he kept from spraining his ankles, but he never would tie his laces. And when I would try to get him to tie his laces on his boots, he would overstretch, and he would break his laces every time.
Oh,
and so I just started calling him laces when we were in the woods. It was always about his shoelaces, which is a silly thing, but that's how these things develop, right?
Yep, that's perfect. That's a perfect example.
So, 5-star.
Yeah.
Who is 5-star?
5-star is my oldest trail brother. I say oldest. He's not that much older than I am, but I call him my older brother. He's the closest thing I've ever had to a real brother. He and I have hiked so many trails together. We met on the PCT, and then I got sidelined because of blisters, so I ended up doing most of the PCT by myself, but we kept in touch because even that time we were together, which wasn't very long, so it was Wrong Tent and 5-star, and I became songbird on the Colorado Trail, which we hiked the following year, but anyway, he's just a lovely human. He's an interesting guy. He is a wilderness EMT, so he's a good one to have along for things that go sideways. But he's just great. We're similar in age. We're very similar in our distances we like to hike per day. We have kind of developed, you talked about a rhythm and a pattern. He and I developed this rhythm and pattern. We hike very well together. We both like the quiet spaces, so we kind of separate often during the day and reconnect for lunch and reconnect in towns, reconnect and at night for camping together and stuff. So we've had a ton of experiences together, and we've had each other's backs through some gnarly stuff. We both got norovirus and COVID and stuff on the AT. The AT tried to kill me, which is part of what Long Lost is about. It's not a victory lap of doing the Triple Crown. It's like, I barely made this thing, and it wasn't even really a goal at any point. I was like ready to just go, okay, well, that was enough of the East Coast. Thanks for playing. But I just stuck with it and managed to Triple Crown, which I'm still sort of in shock about. But I decided to write this book because I felt like that was a really good way to tell the story. I think a lot of people that Triple Crown are like super athletes, and I think that's amazing too, and I'm always in awe of those people. I don't know that that's me. I think I'm just stubborn enough to stick with it, even when it gets super hard, and I'm like, there's power in that too. Oh, yeah. And just being obnoxiously stubborn and probably getting myself in potential trouble, but just staying with it and having that mindset. And that applies to everything in life. That's not whatever your quote unquote trail is, that applies to that. And that's something the trail has taught me. But back to your question, 5-star hiked with me on the AT, and so we met on the PCT. I hiked solo most of the PCT, met a bunch of people, here and there, but I lost my official tramley on the PCT with my blister situation. Then the following year, 5-star reached out to Wrong Tent and I, and we went and we hiked the Colorado Trail together. And nice. Shortly after that, Wrong Tent, he met the love of his life and kind of stepped away from the longer trails and ended up being a really great dad and busy with his work. And so Five Star and I went on to do other trails together. So we did we did the Arizona Trail together. We did the Wonderland Trail together. Then we did the Continental Divide Trail together in 2020. And then we did the AT in 2022. And part of the fun of the book Long Lost is the dynamic of Five Star and I, because he is very introverted. He's very quiet. He's so hard to read. He's a tough nut to crack. And even though by the time we started the AT, we'd hiked, almost 6,000 miles together. He, probably more actually, there were still times when I was just struggling to understand, get what is wrong or whatever. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I talk a lot, as you can tell. And so it was just, we are constantly in this like really interesting dynamic of me being silly and him like not, he's the best way to describe him is he has this gruff exterior, and he'd probably kill me for saying this, but he is just so pure inside. His heart is so kind, and he's such a good guy, but he doesn't release that. And he definitely doesn't release that easily. So I shouldn't say he doesn't release that he's not a good guy. He just holds his emotions very tight to the vest. And he has this sort of stoic external facade. So you see that, and it's hard to penetrate that. And so people don't really get a chance to know him very well. But when you're back to back and belly to belly on these big trails all the time, you really do get to know him. So I feel very blessed that I have gotten to know him, and he's opened up to me like he has. And but it's still a struggle. And I tease him about it. I'm like, I have no idea what you're thinking right now. And I've tried to pry, and he gives me very little to work with. So there's a lot of that push and pull in the book too, where the dynamics is pretty funny. And he gets frustrated with me. I get frustrated with him. We know how to push each other's buttons. There's some days where we are not the best versions of ourselves. And in the book, I wanted to share it. I wanted to share it like it happened, and like the dynamic is on a through hike, because I think a lot of people paint, like I said, a little rosier picture than sometimes it is out there. You're just mentally fractured from not sleeping enough, and your body's worn out, and you're not doing recovery days like you probably should, and you're different people, and you're hiking, and it can be challenging. So I wrote all that in the book, and you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording about the book, and someone had given me kind of a negative review about not putting enough of the trail in the book. There were so many really great, big-hearted people that were like, this book is so fun to read, and I was bummed when it ended. But it's really a human story, and it's wrapped in a trail, is what it is. And so people that aren't hikers have been enjoying it equally as much as those that are, just because it's the push and pull of being human, and the struggle when you do hard things day after day after day with a person that, is as close as blood, but not blood to you.
Well, and I noticed that it is a full-length book. It's not one of the little short 125-page books that some people put in. Good for them, but no, this book has some meat to it. It's over 300 pages.
Yeah, it's 308 pages. It's I wanted to tell it like I felt it. If you don't tell it like you felt it, and then you're writing it, you're writing a trail guidebook, which is great too, but I've done a lot of those. And for me, this book, the memoir was the only format that could hold all the emotion and the crazy things that happened in the stories and all of that. And so I decided to write this memoir. And it is a big book. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of flashbacks to the other trails. It is not a trail guide. Like if you're looking for trail data, it's best to pick up a guidebook, or, some memoirs, like I highly recommend A Walk in the Woods. If you haven't read Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods, man, is that a fun, great book. He goes into a lot of the history of the AT. He talks a lot about that kind of thing. And those books are wonderful too. I wanted to focus my book on sort of the humanity and the emotional side of things, because I feel like maybe that's a little bit of where there aren't a lot of memoirs that really talk about the struggle as much. Yeah. And I sure felt that. And I sure felt a lot of struggle. And it was a difficult thing for me to do. This did not come easy to me, even though I'm literally a professional hiker for work. You would think, she'd go out and knock out these trails without issues, but that was not the case for me. And I felt like that was also good for people to hear. Like, even this person who does this for a living is struggling with this. Okay, I'm not alone in this, or alone in whatever hard thing I'm doing.
A lot of people have a stereotype, is what I'm going to call it, that, well, why did you go hike 3,000 miles through the woods? You have to find yourself or something. That's a common theme. But I think it's a reality for some people on the trail. There's so many reasons to hike the trail, and you're talking about the humanity of what goes on there. What kind of motivations did you discover as you met people? You said, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? What were the drivers?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So on the PCT in 2016, when I did that, the movie Wild had been out for a couple years, so that's a huge one. And you probably experience this too when you talk about backpacking to people that don't do it a lot. They're always like, oh, you're just like that movie. What's the name of that movie? And you always know the answer to that question. But I met some what I was calling the wild hikers on the trail. And one person in particular comes to mind. He was this kid from back east on the PCT. He had this giant backpack. He had this huge hydration reservoir, like water bladder, strapped onto the top, and the thing was like swishing water to the side. This whole backpack was all cattywampus, and it was sideways, and he could barely get up these hills. And he was a big kid too, and so all the odds were seemingly stacked against him. And he was young. And then when we got to Mount Laguna, I saw him smoking, and I thought, well, sometimes nothing against smoking, because a lot of people do that, but I thought that's another challenge, is that, you're having to pack cigarettes, and it's not, it's not the healthiest thing when you're out on the trail. And I know there's a ton of people that do that, but I couldn't help but think yet another, I don't know, contrast. This poor kid is trying everything. And so I had talked to him. I went out and just visited with him a little bit and asked him about, like, why are you doing this? And it was I saw this movie Wild, and I've been through a lot of struggle, and I've been through a lot of things lately, and I wanted to sort of see if I could make that my change. And when I left him, everything inside me thought, there's no way. I want to believe in you, but I'm struggling with everything I'm seeing is pointing to your pack's too big, it's too heavy. It's
not packed right.
Yeah. Well, and I was one to talk at the time. I was all blistered out and chafed, but I thought I was just sure I had the world by the tail. And that was funny. I was really humbled on the PCT. That trail humbled me a ton. But so I was like, oh, this kid, I'll be surprised if he gets like another 100 miles. It'll be shocking. And then 700 miles later, I heard someone calling my name, and I turned and looked, and here he was. And his pack had been shrunk to he had gotten a brand new pack. He'd learned how to pack it. He'd updated his gear. He'd quit smoking. He was hanging out with a whole group of people that were supportive of him. He had lost so much weight in 700 miles. It was crazy. I had to take a double take. Like, is that really you? And he was super cute. He was like, yeah, when I met you, I didn't know that this was going to be the outcome. And he was like, yeah, he was just, I don't know, he's just such a changed version of himself. And I realized this works. This can work. You have to stick with it. It can work for you. And but not everybody is fighting a battle. I read a recent funny post on one of the Facebook groups where the person was like, I went out there expecting to change everything. I came back. I sat at my desk at work and went, well, that was fun. like nothing changed. It was like they just came back to their job and did their thing. So some people it doesn't, and they're not this big transformation. Sometimes it's just you step off a trail and you go back to life. But I think for a lot of people, they are rediscovering who they are, and the trail just naturally does that. Even if you're not really trying to do that, if you open your heart up to like what it can do for you and how it's gonna reshape your physical everything. So then the mind just naturally kind of follows.
I heard a health expert the other day talking about what he called rucking, meaning carrying a backpack.
Yeah, yeah.
But how it had been shown to be one of the healthiest exercises and he gave benefits in every facet of life for carrying a pack. And I thought, well, I really like to hear that, because that's what backpackers do.
Yeah.
is a really great thing to do. But sometimes I've wondered, it's hard on your joints and your posture's screwy because you're leaning forward and, all those sorts of
Yeah.
things. You just said it'll transform your whole body. So what would you describe to people who have no idea what we're talking about? How would you describe that?
Well, you're almost always on these big trails at a calorie deficit. You can't eat enough food.
Yeah.
You're pushing. You're trying to eat as much as you can, but you're burning 4,000 calories a day, maybe sometimes more, and you just can't eat that. Even at home, like if you try to eat that much food, your stomach is going to push back on you. And so you get to town and you get super excited about food. All you can think about is like, are we going to have pizza or burgers or what are we going to eat? And then you go and you think you can eat all this, but your stomach's shrinking and you're like, dang it, I wanted to eat all this pizza. Some people can really put it away though. I've been surprised how that theory of mine has not worked on. Some people are like, no, I ate that whole pizza and then I ordered another one. I'm like, wow. But you're always at a calorie deficit. You're always trying to catch up with what your body is burning. And so you do lose weight, especially when you stick with it. I've heard of people losing 10 pounds in a week just
Wow.
because they can't eat enough. Or sometimes there's something that happens with trail food too, and people just struggle to get it down. It's not always, it's loaded with salt or it's loaded with preservatives or whatever, and it's just not like their normal diet, and so they struggle with it. And so you lose weight, you gain muscle, your body is constant. It's like going to the gym for 10 hours a day. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah,
You're
it really
walking
is.
on a treadmill, up and down on steep inclines, on hard stuff, carrying weights, and you start finding muscles you didn't know you had that are popping out on you, that stuff happens. And, it's a transformation in your body physically. And you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, 3 months in, I remember one specific thing where I looked in a mirror and I was looking at my face and I was like, who is that staring back at me? I haven't seen that, the cheekbones popping out like that or whatever in a while. And it's interesting. And then you come back and, within 3 months, you're back to where you were. So if anybody's looking at this as a weight loss plan, you're starving by the time you get off the trail and you'll eat everything in sight. And it's so funny how many people are like, oh, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep this physique. That's why I did this. And it's so, 3 months later, how you doing? How's everything going? They're like, yeah, I did the treadmill for like a month afterwards. And then
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard to keep it off. Some people are successful with that, but if that's your weight loss plan, it's not always the best one. But you do come off it looking great and feeling great, and and you have a lot of vitamin D from being out there in the elements so much. There's just you feel pretty good. You do have to watch your calories though, and your protein intake, and you have to watch your vitamin intake too, because it's hard to get everything you need from the food you're eating.
Yeah. Boy, we could do a whole show just on food, and we have before
Yeah.
on the Adventure Sports Podcast. We've done that, but I just love to hear everyone's opinions on things like this, because food on the trail it's a big deal. And that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Getting the food right is so hard, and I'm just curious. You've done so much of it. What's your angle, Tami? How do you do it?
Oh my gosh, I am a terrible one to ask this question to, because I just go straight to sugar. I'm terrible because what happens to me is I have great intentions. So, and I think this happens to a lot of people, where you start out and you're like, okay, so I've got this great protein bar and it's got these vitamins and it's got this and it's got a lot of protein and it's packed with fiber and all these good things that I'm going to need. So I'm going to send myself like 5 of those at every resupply, and I'll have 1 per day. And you have this I had a spreadsheet that had all my different things on it and all the, things I needed. And that went out the door by like the 3rd resupply. I was packing those protein bars to a hiker box and sticking them in it. And a hiker box, by the way, is like a take some, leave some box that there is in a lot of towns. But it's funny what your taste, like, it's hard. For one, I don't know if other people have this issue, but for me, I have good intentions when I'm eating at home, like on a normal balanced diet. And then I get out there and my diet is all wonky and you're craving different things and and so you get to your resupply and you're like, why did I think I would love these nut bars? These things, they're not sitting well
Can't
with me.
swallow it.
Can't swallow it. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
dry, and you're 40 miles in between water sources or some crazy thing, and you're like, okay, I can't eat these things. And so I go to my thing is go to whatever works with your tummy if you're struggling with that, and a lot of people do. And you're probably gonna end up donating to the hiker box at some point because you're gonna struggle with what you packed. That has been my experience. I mean, on one hike, I'm like, all right, guess what? It's Chips Ahoy every morning for breakfast. That will just be what it is because this works for me and it's calories. And you don't think about like, oh man, I shouldn't be eating this stuff. It's junk food because you need the calories and it's sitting well in your tummy and it's working well for what you need, which is just getting calories in your body. So you just have to roll with whatever it is that your body's craving, that you're needing. And try to do your best. And so like beef jerky or nuts or something like that are fine. But after months on end of eating that's...
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, or the worst is when people are like, how many oatmeal packets are... like oatmeal to me, especially the instant stuff that's like maple and brown sugar, I get the gag reflex going on that because it's just a big... it looks like paper mache and it's this big lumpy, clumpy, gross...
Some people love it. Some people don't.
I know. I admire the people that love it. I wish I did because it's easy, but it's not for me.
Well, and then you have your freeze-dried foods and dehydrated foods. And, they're different brands and they're not all the same. It's worth trying a lot of different ones. But what you like at home, you probably won't like after a few days on the trail.
Yep. And you'll get sick of them. But I started making my own, and that was a really good strategy because... I just dehydrated them. So I would take like vegetarian chili, and I'm not a vegetarian, but the meat is hard to dehydrate, and you have to do that correctly and make sure you're doing. And oily meats especially is hard. So I just purposely stayed away from that while I was out there. And but I did this really great vegetarian chili, a big pot of it. And then there's these like trays you can buy for your dehydrator. And I did that. And then it turns into like fruit leather after you let it sit long enough.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of cool. And you can flip it over. And then I crunched it up into, once it got, like pliable enough, I was able to put it in little packets and then reconstitute.
Nice.
So that, and I had a Thai dish that I did, a soup that I did like that, and spaghetti. I did my own spaghetti too, and that was really good. So I always looked forward to getting a few different things in my resupply that I knew where it came from. I knew what was in it and how I made it. So that worked out well for me. So anybody with a little extra time, it's a labor of love. It's so hard to do, and your kitchen's a complete mess, but it's fun to kind of have that aspect of it too. And that all goes into that honeymoon period, that fun planning part.
I'm going to share one that I've shared a couple of times already, and even recently, but I'm going to say it again because it worked for me so well. Not that it will work for everybody. But I heard about this from a thru hiker, and I forget who it was. But you take a stick of butter, and you take about the equivalent amount of peanut butter, and you put it on that stick of regular butter, and then you add enough water to make it squeezable so it's not like trying to swallow peanut butter, right?
Yeah.
You smash it all together and you add water until it becomes this almost drinkable paste, squeezable paste. And then you can add whatever sweetener you like, whether that's a little bit of jelly or syrup or honey. What I was blown away with is I would put that in a squeeze tube. And if we didn't have time to stop and make a real meal, I can hike 7-8 hours off a squeeze tube of that stuff. Because it's just so many calories. And it goes down easily for me. Yeah. Because it's already hydrated. Fat in it.
A lot of fat in it.
A lot of fat in it. Yeah. Protein, everything. And I can swallow it on the trail without having to chew,
Yep.
So that's just one that worked for me. But it's not something I would eat at home.
Can you imagine whipping that out? You have guests over. You're like, we're all having this for dessert.
Yeah, it looks like something the dog left in the yard.
Right.
But anyway, you figure it out, I guess.
Probably make a pretty good frosting for like a cupcake or something, if you wanted to do like a healthier cupcake.
That might be good, or something to dip your chocolate bar in. I don't know.
There you go. Or celery.
Yeah, for sure. The book is Long Lost, and I love it because it's not a trail guide. It is the human side of doing this. And I'm going to read your book.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah.
Whenever I get to it, this is one that I want to read. And your trail name is Songbird. For fun, maybe there's a good story behind that trail name you could close us out with.
So on the PCT, when I was solo, I was just going by my name because I didn't yet have a trail name. And I met a hiker. I was super excited in this one campground that I stopped at. There were bluebirds everywhere. So I was just sitting on a picnic table watching all these bluebirds land on all these beautiful pine trees. And it was just a really cool moment. And I had no one to share it with. And along comes this person I had never met. And he was super nice. And I was like, did you see all the bluebirds? And I was pointing them all out. And he looks at me and he says, you're just one zippity away from a doodah, aren't you? You know, with the, it's like, it was funny and it was cute. And we were talking about it and he was like, what's your trail name? Oh, I don't have one. He was like, well, you should just call yourself, why don't you just call yourself Doodah? And I was like, okay. Like, sure. So I went by Doodah on the PCT, which was never quite right because then I never saw him again, that person. And normally when you get a trail name, not always, but sometimes it's a person that you end up hiking with or you have a little history with, you know. So it was like, I just would introduce myself as Doodah and everybody would ask, what is it? Or they would sing, the Camptown ladies sing the song, you know, Doodah, Doodah. And so nobody really got it. And I would always write it in the trail logs and all that. And it just never quite felt right. And I was always a little embarrassed to tell people what it was and how I got it. So I was like, okay, I'll get off the trail and I just won't have a trail name for the next trail and see what happens. But then, of course, my trail brothers realized that it was the bird theme. So they were like, well, we need to make sure you have, you know, a trail name that has the bird theme in it because that was like the original, but we don't want to stray too far from it. So originally they were teasing me and they were like, oh, we'll just call you Big Bird. And I'm like, no girl wants the name Big in their trail name at all. And they were joking around. And then I sing in a band, but also I love singing. And so
you sing on the trail.
I sing on the trail a fair amount. It's not usually good because I'm out of breath and I'm tired and you know, whatever, but it's fun. And so they had heard me singing and then they were like, I know, it's Songbird. Songbird, your name. We're calling you Songbird. And of course loving birds as I do. So that seemed to fit. So we agreed on Songbird. And by the way, you can accept or decline a trail name. So if someone tries to name you something that is less than flattering, always opt for something later on that will fit you better. Anyway, so Songbird became the name, and that's what I went with, and it has a nice ring to it. It seems to fit me, so that's what I am.
You know, some people say, what's in a name? I say there's a lot in a name. A lot in a name. And I've even interviewed people who, when they were trying to change the direction of their lives, they said, I'm going to go by my middle name instead of my first name.
Yeah.
And because it was enough of a disruption, it was like, there's an identity shift here that I need.
Yeah.
And it was a healthy thing for them to do.
Right.
And your trail name can be like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Know? And there's something about that I don't know. It's important to me. In my book, Tami, I have a chapter on not letting people name you.
Oh.
But it's not assigning a trail name that I'm talking about. I'm talking about people describing you to you in ways that may not be fitting. And if you start to own that, you become something that you never needed to be.
Right.
They don't have the right to do that to you.
Yes.
But when someone gives you an encouraging, fun, playful nickname, that's different. You know, that's a lot of fun.
Yep. Your identity is your own. And the kind of the fun part about the trail name thing is when you get one that seems suiting, then it feels like in the future, everybody that calls you that, it resonates with you and it doesn't have a bad connotation. But there are some people walking around with trail names like Skidmark and they have to explain that one every time. Or Captain Underpants or whatever. And some of them are really funny and the stories are great. But yeah, poor Wrong Tent, he accepted it, but he had to, he's a great sense of humor. So he just told his story with a laugh every time. And the part of the fun of naming him that was that every time he had to share that story because people are like, well, how did you get Wrong Tent? You can't get away without telling your story when someone meets you on that one.
Well, that's a good way to get to know people. That's a lot of fun. And you're singing on the trail. I mean, not everyone likes to sing, and maybe not everyone wants to hear people sing. But I have had so much fun singing while hiking and backpacking. I don't know why.
Do
it
you
just
sing?
Works.
Are you a singer?
A little bit. And
nice.
so for instance, I have a small collection of mountain songs, and if I'm climbing a mountain, then sometimes I just have to sing one of the mountain songs as I climb, and it sounds like you enjoy that too.
Yep.
And I apologize for everyone around me who has to put up with it.
I have a hiking playlist, and yeah, it's just that inspirational moment of pulling those songs up and hearing them. In fact, that's the reason this book is called Long Lost, because there's a section in there while I was sitting above. It was late in the evening, and I couldn't sleep. I had a grouchy knee. There was this beautiful owl calling above in the tree somewhere.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'm going to see if I can find that owl, because it sounded like it was right above my tent. So I got my phone out and I got my headphones, and I wasn't really tired for some reason. And I got out and I was looking in the trees for the owl, and I couldn't find him, but I discovered that the ridge I was on, and it was pitch black, had this beautiful view of some distant town, like twinkling like stars way, way beneath where I was sitting. And I was just way up high on this ridge, and the stars, the moon, everything was just like this perfect nighttime. I was like, this is like a storybook. And I went and sat underneath this tree, and I just decided to be still for a minute and just let that moment sort of feel, how it felt, and accept that moment. And it just felt like a gift. And after sitting there for a couple minutes, I thought, I'm going to just pop in a headphone. And sometimes my favorite thing is when life is choreographed to a song by accident. It's happened to me several times, but in particular, so I just hit my hiking playlist to see what song was on there. Or maybe I had been listening to it earlier or something, but the hiking playlist came up, and the song by Lord Huron, Long Lost, came on. And that song, every line in that song felt like that song's very ethereal and beautiful and soulful as it is. And then it was playing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is bypassing my ears and going right into my soul and my heart. And it was just that moment of like, I was right where I was supposed to be in that very moment, and everything, all the stars physically and emotionally were lining up in that moment. So yeah, so I felt like that was the name of the book. It just needed to be.
Nice. That's so beautiful. I love that. That's a perfect place to stop. So Long Lost is the book. Get it. It's going to be great. I can tell. I haven't read it, but I already know it's going to be great. And you know why I know it's going to be great? Because, Tammy, you know how to tell a story.
Aw,
this
thanks,
is obvious, right? So,
thank you.
You have other guidebooks, which
I do.
We didn't really talk about, but if you're looking for a guidebook, then go on Amazon, I would assume, and search for Tami. Will that bring up your guidebooks?
It will, yeah. The first name is Tami, but people probably know that, yeah.
So Tami Asars and Songbird, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Kurt. It's been a blast. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, you bet. So everyone, until the next show, get out there and have some fun.